Welcome to another edition of Liberate Your Authentic Self. This is the special Time to Rise author interview series. Dun, da, da, da. And today I'm so excited that I am joined by Julia Aarhus from Denmark. She is the author of a really juicy chapter in here that I think is going to blow your mind. Because if you've ever tried to, work with the law of attraction, but you just didn't get results, it might be that you're not living according to the agenda of your soul. Julia knows all about this and so much more. So Julia, thank you for being here. And thank you for being so open and willing to share your experience with this extended unemployment and how you've really processed your life. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very excited to do this, and it's my pleasure.
Well, I know that you have been on a journey since you became unemployed and went through that whole experience, which I know we'll touch on, which can be a challenge. I remember when I became unemployed in the traditional sense, when I had my daughter, it threw my whole world upside down in terms of, am I valuable to the world anymore? And all of those kind of questions. And then you became a life coach, which allowed you to kind of dig even deeper into knowing yourself. So there's so much for us to dig into. But I really love how you describe that living in perspective of the soul, or from the perspective of the soul, changes everything. So talk to me about your experiences with unemployment and becoming a life coach and how you arrived at that understanding.
Yeah, it did certainly change my life. Both, the life coach training I went through, and simultaneously I was reading or listening to an audio of Neale Donald Walsch's Conversations with God. And those two things, the life coach training and the Conversations with God series by Neale Donald Walsch, were just, working together and just setting me free. It did change my life. Through the life coach training that I did, I became aware of so many unconscious things going on in me. So what triggers this emotion in me? Okay, I'm actually responsible for this part. It's not the others. It's not his fault or the politician's fault or society's fault or whatever. And became more and more aware of, my basic human needs, not just eating and sleeping, but what kind of my needs for feeling that I'm contributing and making a difference in the world, and my need for connection and love and belonging and variety and so on.
Well, before we get into those human needs, I'd like to kind of circle back, because there's, there's a lot going on there. So if we could unpack a bit of it. So starting off with Neale Donald Walsch, I have loved those series of books, The Conversations with God, because I remember it was a complete paradigm shift for me. As you're reading Neil's conversation, you're like, whoa, this changes everything. It's like what you just said about, I can't blame anyone out there. I'm responsible, but not in a bad way, like, oh, you're bad. But talk to me first about what were the revelations for you that really felt true for you as you were reading Conversations with God?
Yes, exactly. They felt so true. I just knew it at a level that was beyond up here, that this was true for me, at least. And well, one thing that just rang true to me was that all there is love, and everything comes from love. Or, lack of love, or cry for love. And that we are all connected, that we are actually one. And that we, it was through the Conversations with God series that I finally found that explanation that made sense to me and rang true to me in my heart. What it means to have a soul. What is it? It's an individuation of God. So we are all individuations of God, and thereby we are all connected and one in that sense. And I've always just somehow known that all that talk about heaven and hell wasn't true. The hell part, it doesn't exist. And also that you don't have to die to go to heaven. This is heaven. You know, we are already here on earth with God.
Wow. And so we can experience the heaven, however you want to define that, while we're here.
Yes.
So how did you put into context then? So as you, I don't want to give away everything about your chapter here, but really what led you to that sort of experience of just digging into self-help and personal development and spirituality and life coaching was your experience with extended unemployment. So as you're like, okay, I'm unemployed, I'm not finding a job, that brings up those ideas of blame, right? We want to look externally or blame ourselves. How did you kind of rationalize these two new paradigms clashing? You know, the idea of victimhood versus, okay, we're all coming from love, we're all one.
It was definitely a process. And it wasn't until I went and attended a workshop with Neil. We were so lucky. He actually came to Denmark back in 2013, October 2013, a 2-day workshop. And it was at that workshop where, you know, I got the missing piece for everything to sort of fall together in me.
And what was that? What was the missing piece?
The missing piece was that all creation is co-creation. And I was, as I explained in my chapter in Time to Rise, I was really working on this law of attraction thing to attract that dream job with, you know, wonderful colleagues and where I could work with what I love and so on. And at that point I just really would love an employment where I could work as a life coach. And it wasn't happening, you know, and I was doing all the magic that you're supposed to do, you know, visualizing and feeling, getting into the feeling, sending out the vibe of already having a job and so on. But at the same time, it had taken a toll on me. You know, at this point, I had been unemployed for, I think, 15 months. And the first 12 months went by without even being called for an interview. Sending out, you know, job applications every week, 2, 3, 4, every week, not getting called for a single job interview. That had taken a toll on me. I was, you know, my self-esteem was...
I can imagine.
Was not good and so on and so on. And the whole, limbo of who am I? Where do I, you know, what's my identity? You know, because it's so hung up on the profession that you
exactly
have.
On what we're doing, what our role is, how successful we are, how much money we make. Exactly. Yeah, that identity can be totally collapsed with a job or a function. Mm-hmm. So here you are, you're at this workshop and you're realizing everything is a co-creation. Can we dig into that? What does that mean?
It means that, and it's from a soul level, you know, it's not something we do consciously. We do create things consciously. We created Time to Rise with 28 other wonderful people. And that was, of course, consciously whether we did that. But unconsciously, my long-term unemployment was created from a soul level, not just by me, but by everybody who was and ever will be affected by it.
So that means even your children, right?
Definitely.
Because at a soul level, they're connected to you. But again, this is the thing I think people struggle with, because they say, well, in your case, you're fine. Obviously, you're in a very safe and healthy environment. But someone could say, if I ended up unemployed, that's going to hurt my children. Why would my children on a soul level choose that? If it's truly a co-creation. So talk to me about that. So you're saying everyone who is affected now and could be, like, meaning into the future, is co-creating these experiences.
Yes.
That's juicy.
And it's wild, and it is mind-blowing. It was. I remember sitting there, and it was just like, wow, really? And of course it was a good thing for my children that I was home.
Yeah.
So much when they were little. I had 2 runs of extended long-term unemployment. And I was actually very much present when my 2 girls were little. And of course there were also things that weren't so wonderful for them with me being unemployed for such a long time, because my stress levels went up and down a few times during those periods. But you give a little and you get a little, and all in all, their souls must have come to the conclusion that it was worth it.
And so do you have any idea what was the agenda of your soul to have those experiences starting then?
Well, I think there are more agendas. So there was definitely an agenda from my soul perspective, that I had a lot of time with my kids, that they did not have, long days at daycare and kindergarten. And then also, I actually ended up writing a whole book about it.
Right, which is how we initially connected.
Exactly.
To talk about publishing that book. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So, and I know that I just know that book will make a difference to people, unemployed people, and maybe just not even unemployed people, but also just people struggling with other challenges in their life.
I totally agree with you, because I think what you've managed to do is to recognize a higher purpose. So right now, I think it's easy for someone who's unemployed to think that, okay, my purpose right now is to get a job. But you're able to give us this deeper perspective that says, hey, wait a minute, there's an even greater purpose going on, your overall life purpose, especially from the level of the soul. So when we get back from the break, I'd love to explore how you come to terms with, okay, I'm human. I have human needs. We have, the need for connection and love and fulfillment and, yes, earning and eating. But there's also this other perspective that I'm also a spiritual being. So I'd love it if we can talk about those human needs, and also why being open and vulnerable about those needs is the key to us really living a full life. Tune in daily to get fired up with insight and inspiration for purposeful living, conscious relationships, and soulful success. You're watching Liberate Your Authentic Self with me, Dr. Andrea Pennington. Check out the live version of this show, where I answer your questions in real time. Visit facebook.com/Dr. Andrea Pennington. Welcome back to our special Ask the Author interview series for Time to Rise, including 29 inspiring stories from life changers, game changers, world changers, change makers around the world. And with me today is Julia Aarhus from Denmark, who is really giving us some great insight into what it means to be a spiritual being having a human experience and how we can navigate the sometimes painful challenges of life. So Julia, before we went to the break, you were talking to us about coming to terms with our soul being in co-creation with all of the souls that we will interact with in this life. But you also, through the process of your spiritual work and becoming a life coach, you really came to understand the human side of being a human spiritual being. Can you talk to us about some of those needs that you're starting to recognize that we as humans have universally?
Mm-hmm. Yes. We were working with Tony Robbins, six basic human needs, and you know, the need for connection and feeling that you're connected and that you belong to a group of some kind is definitely important to realize. You know, loneliness is one of the biggest illnesses we have worldwide, and definitely also here in Denmark. Some people have a need to experience variety more than others. That's also one of them, and so on. And I can't think of them all right now, but definitely I found out that, you know, this long-term unemployment wasn't fulfilling my needs. You know, it was very lonely, and I didn't feel I was, you know, contributing. Contribution is also, you know, you feel important somehow, that you are of value to somebody, or at least
Absolutely.
You're value to some kind of to a company, that, you know, you help make the numbers not red and so on. And there were just, you know, there's a need for security, and not having a job and not having that stable income and so on. You know, it was long-term unemployment was just not fulfilling my needs. And I became aware that I needed to, you know, my first run of long-term unemployment, I wasn't aware of all this. I was just miserable, really. And then during my second run of long-term unemployment, I was going through the life coach training, and I was like, so that's why I felt so miserable last time, and I became aware, that I needed to have my needs fulfilled somewhere else or in some other way, and that it was my responsibility to do something about it. And then, you know, that was first sort of step out of feeling like a victim in it.
Yeah, I could see that shift from just rather, yeah, I get that. I love that you're saying that as you started to recognize that these are human needs that we all have.
Exactly.
It puts it into a different perspective. Like, okay, if I have this need and I'm not getting it met in this one way, it doesn't mean I'm wrong or bad. It just means, okay, we got to find another way. Because I had that same challenge. You know, one of those needs that you talked about is this need for newness or novelty. And I used to think that I was a bad person because I got bored very easily. You know, I would see other people that could just do the same thing over and over, and it would make me crazy. And it's like you say, until I realized that I was higher on a need for novelty than other people, it allowed me to get to a sense of self-acceptance and then take those steps to fulfill that need for myself in a way that wasn't destructive. So as you started to make this shift that you're talking about from from being a victim to recognizing that you're co-creating, how were you able to start to recognize that if there's something else, this agenda for the soul? I think that's where I'm still stuck. Because we still need to eat. We have the human need for love, connection, fulfillment, being a contribution, and feeling like we're meaningful on the planet. But then what do you think your soul was up to, or the souls of everyone that's connected to you?
Well, one thing that this extended unemployment gave me was much more time with my children, but also, I did apply for all the jobs I had to apply for and so on. But if I spent all my hours from 9 to 3 doing just searching for and applying for jobs, I think I would have gone insane. I had to have some positive input, and all the rest of the hours that were left, I did read Neale Donald Walsch's books. I read a couple of books by Brené Brown on daring to be vulnerable, and I read other books, and I watched. I found things on YouTube that sort of educated me and lifted me up.
Yeah. So it gave you the opportunity to dive into a whole nother world to find that fulfillment.
It was a time of education.
Yeah.
And it was a time of connecting inwards. I had a lot of alone time, and I've always been giving more than I had. So for once I was going inwards and listening to the impulses I got from, that book, it's calling for me. I need that. And, all the little things that sort of, my senses were getting more fine-tuned into the senses that were in me.
Yeah.
My vision.
I love that you're sharing that, because obviously, that's the reason why I compiled and created this book, because I think as we share these different perspectives and stories, people can find hope. They can find a new way to process their pain or their grief and to rise up again. And I love what you just said about connecting with the work of Brené Brown, who talks a lot about the power of being vulnerable, that courage to fall and get back up. So talk to me a little bit about this idea of vulnerability, because even before you wrote this chapter in Time to Rise, as you said before, you had already envisioned sharing a lot in a book that you knew was going to be of service and help to others. But that step from moving into, wow, I've lost my job, I'm feeling like a loser, to wow, this is going to help and empower many people. Talk to me about that idea of your vulnerability becoming a strength.
Yes. Brené Brown writes that daring to be vulnerable gives us exactly what we are so hardwired for: love and belonging, and from looking at vulnerability, sharing your story vulnerably as weakness, my whole perspective of it was transformed through reading Brené's books into it being a strong thing, a very courageous thing. And I think I have been, people that I'm close with, I've always been very open, very vulnerable. Here I am, and sometimes I've actually also been too open with people that didn't deserve it or weren't ready for it, or, which then could leave me a bit hurt, because they not all people can handle it. You sort of have to feel your way and see. But the general thing is that people look at vulnerability as a weakness, and it's not. It's so misunderstood. It's your biggest strength. It will get you that connection, that connection and that love that you're so hardwired for, as Brene puts it.
Yeah. And it is that true, deep, intimate connection that shifts everything. And I think the other power I found through opening up and sharing my story, sharing the stories of others, is that sense of that shared humanity. That when we both are able to see, wow, we both struggle, we both have needs that aren't being met, we've both done things that have hurt ourselves or hurt other people, it opens up the space for compassion. And so did you find that as well? Did you find that you were able to be much more compassionate with yourself during this extended unemployment, and much more present? And obviously you were present for your daughters, but it's a matter of that added value of compassion. Did you find that?
I did. Yes, I certainly did. I definitely felt more compassion with myself, and felt worthy of compassion. So and ended up through the whole journey of getting to know my human needs, and also getting to know what kind of values have I actually been living my life from unconsciously, to choosing conscious values. This is how I want to live my life. And to daring to be vulnerable about my story, about my heartache and my hardship, to then realizing that, hey, this is so much bigger than little me.
Yeah. And you actually said something that you could see how your hardship served a bigger purpose in life. And I'm always in awe of people who say, when they look back over their life at all the trauma and the drama and the pain, they get to a certain moment where they say, I actually wouldn't change it. Exactly. Like, all of that hardship has served such a greater purpose. Can you talk to me about that?
That's exactly how I feel. I wouldn't change a thing. I I don't know. It's just.
But you've also talked to me before about that intersection of recognizing the soul, coming from the soul consciousness and the human consciousness, that you're recognizing that the human suffering is actually allowing your soul to manifest. Like you said, it's finding your values, the values of your true spirit. And is that what you mean?
Exactly. Yes. It's been, the challenges have guided me inwards, and they have made me more conscious of what it is, how it is I want to live my life, who I want to be, and the subtle inner voice of my soul. Because it is subtle. If we're too busy being up here in our minds and calculating everything and how and this and very ego-centered, we will not hear what our soul is trying to whisper gently in our ear, for a while at least, because I believe that at some point we will get our wake-up call.
Yeah, but that means that for most of us, the soul starts screaming at you, or life screams at you. You hit rock bottom, and you're like, yeah.
And then it's a major crisis, and it doesn't have to be that way. I realize that now, that if I'm attuned, then it doesn't have to be these huge this huge crisis that knocks me over and leaves me completely flat on the ground.
Yeah. And that's it. That's the beauty of what we call post-traumatic growth. Rather than our trauma causing us to wither and die, we can become resilient. We can grow. We can actually move forward. We can rise. So what's next for you?
Well, next is getting my full book and ready for the world. It's been a while. I wrote it in 2013 and January 2014, and it's just been patiently waiting for me to get ready. And I see that timing is perfect as well. There might have been a lot of people who would have benefited from the book coming out sooner, but I wasn't ready. My girls weren't ready. We have had things we had to go through to stand strong in ourselves. Plus, this process of being part of Time to Rise made me realize that the book had the wrong title.
So your book.
My book, yeah,
right.
Not Time to Rise. Time to Rise has the perfect title, but my book was actually called Finding Work is Pointless. And it just suddenly felt wrong. And the funny thing is, years have gone by since I finished writing it, and sometimes I couldn't remember what it was called. I have this book about unemployment and stuff, and I couldn't remember what it was called, and I realized that I've been saying stop looking for work, and then I opened my document and said, oh, it's not even called that. It's called Finding Work is Pointless. What's that about? And I know now. It's because it's supposed to be called something completely different.
I love it.
Yeah. And being part of Time to Rise made me realize that. So timing is perfect that way. But that's definitely my next step is to finish that up and moving towards having it published and making that difference out there in the world.
Awesome. And I know there's so much more for you beyond that. It's I love that every time we get together, it's like these new ideas, these new epiphanies hit us. So I just want to thank you again for your courage and for your generosity in sharing so much of you and your experience in this book. And I know that in your work as a life coach and as you move into new roles as a speaker and workshop facilitator and all of this, that the world will be blessed because of you. So thank you.
I thank you, Andrea, really.
Well, I'm excited that people can get in touch with you. We have her Facebook links in the description. And of course, if you're in Denmark, you can check her out and get some coaching with her as well. Julia Aarhus, one of the contributing authors to Time to Rise, thank you so very much for being here.
Thank you.
Much love.
Much love.
How do you pick yourself up when life knocks you down? Perseverance, grit, determination, resilience. These words describe natural human qualities which help us bounce back after any type of setback: illness, loss, betrayal, bankruptcy, divorce, abuse, and trauma. No one is immune to experiencing the tragedies of life at some point. Learning how to use your potential to rise again is what will keep you going.
I'm Dr. Andrea Pennington, creator and publisher of Time to Rise. In Time to Rise, 29 inspiring changemakers share their personal stories of transformation to prove that you can reclaim your life, find your purpose, and re-emerge as the powerful creator that you are.
It can be tempting to think that the people who succeed in life or who recover after major devastating loss are special or somehow endowed with magical powers. The reality is, within you are the very same powers. You have the potential to live a life of meaning and purpose in alignment with your values. You have the right and the power to reclaim wellness, live with vitality, and enjoy real happiness. Get your copy of Time to Rise and enjoy free gifts with your purchase. May this book help you reconnect to who you really are. May you find peace and hope. May you claim this moment as your time to rise. Visit timetorise.me and buy the book anywhere books are sold.